so in today's Geeky Stuff Deep Dive, we're going to be checking out a Michael Kelly guitar. I want to thank you guys so much for this because this is a brand you guys brought up on the podcast a bunch of times. And you know who noticed? Michael Kelly Guitars. So they reached out and they said, hey, could we loan you a Michael Kelly guitar and have you check it out and share it and do a deep dive? And absolutely, the answer is yes. This is their Patriot mod shop model. So if you're not familiar with the brand Michael Kelly, first of all, it's not a person named Michael Kelly. The original founder of the company named it after his children, Michael and Kelly. And that's where it came from. And although it's had different ownerships throughout the years, the important thing to understand is what the market has always been for these guitars. It's been kind of like over the top quality for price. Load the things up with everything you can think of, but keep the prices reasonable. And you know, in today's market, that's a hard thing to say, but this guitar is pretty reasonable for the feature sets. First thing you can tell is that it's a single cut. What it is though is a beautiful 3A quilted top. Now of course I'm assuming that's a veneer, but we'll check. We'll go into the geeky section, don't worry, we'll see what they did. This is a mahogany body with a set mahogany neck. Okay, so here are the specifications. We have a rosewood fretboard, 12-inch radius, 24 3/4 scale length with a Tone Pros bridge that's string through body. We have a thinner body. So if you're familiar with the Les Paul Lite, L-I-T-E, it's the thinner body. So you get a thinner body. What does that do? It gives you a lighter guitar, and we'll weigh that in the geeky stuff. You have a modern C-carved neck, which will give you dimensions in a minute. We have a graphite nut with 22 nickel silver medium jumbo frets, mother of pearl and abalone inlays. So there's a little bit of both going on there. As you can see, there's a little abalone in the center of that mother of pearl. And then of course this abalone stripe down the guitar just to kind of set it off and make it gorgeous. If you're going to do a two-piece top, why not put a beautiful ornate piece right there? We have two Seymour Duncan pickups, and what's interesting is they're both JBs, and funny thing about that is that's my favorite combination of Seymour Duncan pickups. I've done this for years. I got excited once when I was checking out an Eddie Van Halen Wolfgang guitar and I was playing it, and I really loved the neck pickup. And when I tested it, I found out the neck pickup had higher output than the bridge. That's very unique to Eddie. And I was like, that's really cool. And it got me kind of like going like, you know, some of my favorite Strats have 3 identical single coil pickups in it. In other words, they're the same output. Each pickup is the same. So I started doing that to a few of my guitars, putting identical neck and bridge pickups, and the JB was the first one I ever did, and I love that combination, so I think it's great they're using it. We have 2 volumes and a tone control and 2 coil split switches, and that will give you 8 different combinations. Grover tuning keys that have 14:1, so that means you have to turn them 14 times to get 1 rotation. Makes it a little bit more finite when you're tuning. And these are the Imperial keys, which I think are gorgeous. You have a cream plastic binding around the body and the neck that is beautifully done, executed flawlessly, and that's because it's made in Indonesia. We know that the Indonesian guitars, they're some of the best guitars in the market right now, and I think a lot of people agree with that. Those are your specifications. Let's get into the geeky stuff. Okay, so let's go ahead and go through the guitar. First, we want to go over the fact that it's in tune. Let's go over the relief and the guitar. So we do that by putting it in the playing position. Go ahead and push down on the last fret with our thumb, the first fret with our pointer finger, and this has some relief. You can tell that by how much distance is between the string and the fret. The next thing we want to do is go over the action. So let's go ahead and measure that. And this guitar was shipped to us with 1.75 millimeters, which is 0.07 on the 12th fret. So pretty good action. We know, if you've watched a lot of the geeky stuff over the years, you know that I'd say 90% of the time the manufacturers are shipping the guitar at 2 millimeters up the 12th fret. And the reason we started doing that is not so much that we could tell you if a guitar is bad or good when a guitar comes in, but so you can compare how are they doing it. And factories are doing it the same way. They're doing it the same way. This guitar, I should also mention, comes with D'Addario 9 to 42s, which is an interesting set. I want to confirm that. And they are 9 to 42s. Different, that's a different thing because normally with 24 3/4 you'd see 10s. So they're definitely going for the easy playability. You know, kind of make it easy. So 9 to 42s is obviously a preference. And now we've done the action. Let's do the intonation. Here we go. Let's. So if you heard that real quick, if you heard that pop, or I call it the tink sound, what you heard was the string was binding in the nut a little bit, and when I tuned it, a little bit, it's because it binds in the nut, and then as I turn the tuning key, it pops out, and what you're hearing is it almost plucking it. That just means that the nut could use to be either smoothed out or filed a little bit more, or just some lubricant in there. And for lubricant, you can use a tube of Big Ben's Nut Sauce, Lubricant by Daddario. You could just take a pencil and run it in the slots, or some 3-in-1 oil. Let's check the intonation. Ready? We have the E is on. We have the A, it's on. We have the D, it's on. We have the G, it's on. The B is a little flat. And the E is just a little flat. Could those use a quick adjustment on these two saddles, the high E and the B? Absolutely. I have a video on that. I always put it down below. It shows you a quick way to do that. That should be a quick adjustment. And for those of you concerned that you might have to adjust action or deal with that, no, this is just so, this amount is so minor that you'd probably be fine if you left it alone. Let's check the nut. To do that, it's real simple. What we're going to do is take our ring finger, push down on the 3rd fret. The E is perfect, the A is perfect, D is perfect, G is perfect, B is perfect, high E is perfect. Perfect. So they cut the nut perfectly. So I would say out of the box, perfectly ready to play. The question we always get is, well, did they hand pick one to ship to you guys? We ask them not to do that when they ship one, but we also sometimes kind of hope they do in a little way, because now they're on record for this is how good they can ship you a guitar. Let's go ahead and check the frets. And so what we want to do now is go ahead and play all the notes to see if we have any dead frets. Okay, no dead spots. There was a couple frets that got a little buzzy. The note's still kicking, sounds good, but just a little buzzy. And of course, we know the action's relatively low. It's not super low, but it's relatively low. And of course, we're using 9-gauge strings on a 24 3/4. So I'd almost say you're asking for it. So, I mean, if that's something that bugs you, you may want to go to 10s or raise the action back up to 2 millimeters. But I don't necessarily feel that the fret is high and needs to be addressed. Normally I'm going to do the sock test next, but I got to point out right now is a good time to do the handshake test. When I was doing the playing all the notes, I have to admit this is one of the first guitars where I could play all the way across the fretboard. So when we talk about the handshake, this is the best handshake I've ever had. It's probably because the body's just a little thinner, and the carve here is just nice, and it's out of your way. And I mean, look at that. I mean, look at that. That's great. So playability-wise, fantastic. But we still have to do the sock test. Somebody asked last video, is your socks literally in an ammo box? And they are. And my question back to them was, well, where do you keep your nylon socks? Because the answer was I didn't know where to keep mine, so that's what I did with it. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. We're going to check the fret ends to see how well they polish the fret ends. Oh, and there's a little bit there. You can see a little bit of marks there. Not much. I would definitely call that a 4.5 out of 5. Let's do this again and again. I mean, right there, 4.5 out of 5. Basically, it means they're going to feel really good. Okay, doing the bass side, I almost have no scratches at all. I could hear something. A little bit, you feel like you hear it catching, but when you look, there's almost no marks on the sock. So let's go ahead and check the bridge. And what we're going to do on the bridge right now is we're going to check to see if there's anything that scratches you or pokes you, especially these corner pieces right here. They could get really aggressive and sharp. And this one's pretty good. It's not super sharp, probably because you're using Tone Pros, and it's just a little fit and finished better. There's nothing there. So for those that are a little sensitive when you're playing on the guitar and your things on the bridge poke you, although it looks like there's a lot of things that could do that, there's nothing here. I mean, it's just perfect. Which is why I like the sock test. I don't have to tell you guys. I can show you guys, and that's what I want to show you, is their fit and finish of their work. Another thing we like to do when we're testing frets is just randomly do some bends and feel how the friction is to hear scratch, and sometimes I don't want to pluck them even though I'm right now. And these are glossy, fantastic. These are definitely been highly polished frets. So they've definitely taken the time to polish these frets. That's really good. I'm actually impressed with the fit and finish overall of the guitar. Because it looks gorgeous. So then you're like, okay, well, it looks gorgeous. Is it really gonna play like how it looks? And it does. Let's do some measurements, shall we? So the nut, we have the nut at 43 millimeters, which is 1 11/16. We have the 12th fret at 53.31 millimeters, which is 2.099. So that's really nice. This neck is what I'm interested in. They say it's a C carve, and it feels not chunky. It actually feels to me, if you've ever played a real 59 Les Paul, which is so weird to say, I've played 4 now. Everybody always talks about the necks being chunky. In my experience, the real 59 Les Paul's necks weren't that chunky. And some of the reissues, like the R9s, are really chunky and some of them are not so chunky. This would be a non-chunky 59 Les Paul neck. I'm really curious about that. So what I'm gonna do is grab a template for that style of neck. Let's take a look there. There we go. So what we have is a C-carve template, and it is coming in a perfect C-carve. Let's go over here. And definitely another C-carve as well. So it's definitely the rounded C-carve, and what will help you with that is to know what those measurements are. So let's see how thick this neck is. Let's go ahead and get these measurements, if you don't mind. And first, we want to do the first fret. Thickness of the neck at the first fret is 22.14 millimeters, or 0.871. On the 12th fret, we are at 0.971, or 24.66 millimeters. So again, not a super thick neck, but definitely not considered a thin neck. I think it's very comfortable. Puts it, in my opinion, in, since this is a Les Paul shaped guitar, let's just say thicker than a 60s Gibson for sure, but not as thick as the 50s Gibson. So sitting there in a sweet spot, in my opinion. Okay. So we talked about this in the specifications, that the body is thinner, as you can see right there. It's pretty thin, and it's got a really nice carve to it. See how nice the carve is? So what does that translate to in weight? This guitar, this one they shipped to us, is 7.5 pounds, 7.51 pounds. So 7.5 pounds, which is perfect. So let's take a look at electronics. Something to point out now is that the back plates are recessed in the body. And that's a nice little touch. This one's a little on the warp. It's a little warped. It's not bad. It's just a little bit misshapen. And again, you know, we got to point out everything we see, good and bad. So, although that's not the most horrible thing, considering it's not something everybody's looking at, I just want you to be aware of it. Okay, let's pull the back plate off. There we go. No shielding on the back of the plate. So interesting there. And looking in here, I can't tell if that's shielded. So for those of you curious to see if you can tell if a cavity's been shielded, there is a great way to test it. You take your multimeter, you put it here, and yes, we have conductivity. So there is shielding paint inside the cavity, but it's applied not so great. You can see lots of spots where they missed and they could have cleaned it up. We have alpha potentiometers, full-size alpha potentiometers, and of course the tone control has a capacitor on it with 2 mini switches added for coil splitting. These are 500K, so you have 3 500K potentiometers. Let's see what kind of 3-way switch they used. The output jack looks quality. 3-way switch seems to be a quality switch. I'm not a big fan of the box switches. They're a little cheaper feeling and stuff. This is one of the better switches. One thing that I always try to rectify on this channel is a lot of confusion by a lot of channels out there, and I don't know why they do this. The brand Alpha is a good brand. It makes really good components. High-end amplifiers use Alpha. Alpha is a good brand. Is it a premium brand? No, but it is a very reliable, good product. Full-size potentiometers versus small potentiometers literally have nothing to do with the quality. It can. I just keep seeing it like, oh, this has a big pot, so it's good quality. That doesn't mean anything. And this has a small pot, and that has bad quality. Sometimes it just has to do with the friction. The bigger pots tend to have less friction. The smaller pots tend to have more friction. There's a ton of reasons why different manufacturers use different potentiometers. And cost is a big part, but there's a big difference between total crap and good versus better. Let's take a look at the truss rod and see what they did there. What we have is a dual action truss rod. And a lot of you have asked in the past, how do I know that? When you have a single ended truss rod, what's going to happen is it's righty-tighty. So when you tighten it clockwise, it's going to cause the neck to get straighter and straighter and straighter, and eventually it could have back bow. If you go counterclockwise, the neck will get relief, and eventually it will go forward until it has a lot of relief. On a dual action truss rod, what's going to happen is that same rule applies, except for at some point when you're going counterclockwise, you'll get to a point where then it'll get tighter again, and as it gets tighter, it'll push the neck to have more relief. So you have more control. Why is a dual action truss rod good? Because it's better at making the neck do exactly what we want it to do. So sometimes, believe it or not, when you have a bad neck, it has back bow so bad that you can't get it to go straight and give it some relief. But we've had necks where, again, they have too much relief and we can't get them to go straight. So a dual action truss rod is just going to handle either one of those situations versus a single action truss rod deck will only handle one of those situations, even though that's the most likely situation. Last, we want to look at these pickups. Let's take a look at them. First, they are exactly what they said. These are two Seymour Duncan JBs, which is an SH4 for those Seymour Duncan freaks out there. They are shielding both the pickup cavities. Okay, so I need to look. Okay, so I just wanted to verify. On their website, it said that it has a 3A quilted maple top. If it's a solid top, a solid piece, a 1/4 inch piece or a 1/2 inch piece, that is in the description. They tend to go for like solid top, 1/4 inch top, 1/2 inch maple cap. If they don't say anything, it's probably good 90% of the time to assume it's a veneer. In this case, it didn't say on their website what it is. So of course, this wouldn't be a geeky stuff deep dive review if we didn't take a deeper look, and I removed the shielding paint, and what I found was you have a mahogany body with a 1 inch maple cap and then a quilted veneer on top. Of course, this abalone is also legit, it's real. And don't worry, I know I'm not keeping this guitar, so I went ahead and reapplied the shielding paint and put it back to new. In fact, I even improved it a little bit by filling in the spots they didn't do. For those of you that want to know what these pickups are reading at. Okay, so on the bridge, we're reading at 15.87K. The neck pickup is reading at 1606. I know what you're thinking, they're different. That's how it works. Pickups are a little bit different. There's a variance of 10% either direction, especially on mass-produced pickups like these. Let's go ahead back to the bridge. The bridge sitting at 15.87K. When you coil split that, it's going to cut that in half, about 8.10 or 8.10. When we go to the neck, we're going to see that 16.06 drop to 8.26. So the coil splits are doing exactly what they're supposed to do. My guess is single coil tones are going to sound great in this. As you guys know, I love coil split pickups when the pickups have a little bit more because those single coils just tend to get it right into the sweet spot of where single coils tend to sit. It's important to mention, as of filming this video, this guitar is selling for about $879.99, and it does not include a gig bag or case. So let's do the important part, which is let's see how it sounds and plays, and then I'll give you some final thoughts. For the sound samples, a couple things. I'm using a Fender Supersonic 22, running through a 112 with a cream back in it. I'm miking it up with an SM57, and I'm running a room mic to give you an idea what it sounds like here in the room. But more importantly, the pickups, when I first plugged them into the amp, they were really pushing the amp. They were just aggressive because they were really high. So I went ahead and lowered them, and that's a question you get a lot, is what measurement do you use? I don't use a measurement, I just use my ear, and I adjust them like moving a microphone around a speaker until I find a spot where I think it's producing the sound I like. Let's go ahead and coil split it. Let's go ahead and go to the bridge pickup. This is going to be your humbucker. go to the middle position, this is going to be... So with the both switches down, you're going to be 2 single coils. That'll give you that telly. Versus the 2 humbuckers. Yeah, and then of course, variations. So this is going to be your humbucker bridge with single coil neck. And then of course reverse, humbucker neck with the single coil bridge. So a lot of tonal variations there. Let's go ahead and switch the amp over to the gain setting. We're going to start with the bridge in humbucker mode. Okay, let's go ahead and check that out with the coil split. Let's go to the neck pickup. So where do I land? Where do I think of this? So what are some suggestions and thoughts I could give you if you're looking at stuff like this? Well, first of all, I have to tell you, these guitars, of course, are great alternatives to Epiphones for the money. Although this guitar is not inexpensive, you're getting Seymour Duncan pickups, you're getting an insanely cool wiring options, you're getting a beautiful quilted top with some really nice accents, you're getting the Grover tuning keys, and you're getting the thinner body, which is cool. If you guys remember, I did a review of the Epiphone Muse, and that's what I kind of think of when I think of this guitar, is the Epiphone Muse. Same kind of concept. From the front, they look like you got the real deal, but of course, only you know that you're playing a slightly lighter, thinner, more comfortable guitar. I would love to see a locking key on this, of course, and one option that the PRS has that this doesn't is that it comes with a gig bag where this one doesn't. So that would be another nice option. Neck-wise is another thing too. The PRS SE's pattern regular necks are a little thick, a little chunky, they're fine, but this neck's just a little slimmer. It's right in between. So if you think that the PRS SE thin neck on the SEs is too small, this will probably make you happy. If you think the PRS SE necks are a little too chunky, this will make you happy because it's just right in that sweet spot. But more importantly, if you like the Epiphone Muse, this is going to feel very familiar to that. Maybe just a little thicker. You might want to compare it to my specifications I did on the Muse to see exactly how different they were, but feel-wise, they are pretty close. I love the idea of doing 2 volume knobs and one master tone and then giving these 2 switches instead of just doing push-pulls. I like the switches. Some of you guys say it doesn't matter. The push-pulls are fine, but when you're trying to kind of find and pull on these things, it's a lot easier just to go right to a switch, and I prefer the switches by far. I want to thank the guys at Michael Kelly for sending the guitar out so we could check it out. I want to thank you guys for hanging out to the end of the video. Till the next time, know your gear.